something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
G'day, folks. How are you? Sorry, looking around for the bloody camera and put the phone on silent just as it started going off. And drop your pen. Oh, I'm having one of those days. Got to be honest. It's been a long weekend, just between you, me, and the gatepost. How was yours? Hope it's all going all right. God knows you'd have a reason to feel a little bit down over certain things that have happened recently. We'll talk about a few of those. I guess we'll kick it off straight away with the news out of the WHO, which I guess by now you've all become aware of. Apparently there was some pre-emptory celebration going on last week when we thought the WHO document had been overturned. Well, it had been overturned. That didn't stop the bastards. Remember, I did say they're not going to stop. Well, they didn't. They just went behind closed doors against their own charter and conducted a vote there, which resulted in this bullshit.
Tonight, we have all won, and the world has won. I offer you all my warmest congratulations, my sincerest admiration, and my deepest gratitude. You have made history here today in approving a strong package of amendments to the international health regulations. You have strengthened the cornerstone of international health law. In doing so, you have made the world safer. I have always believed that both the IHR amendments and the pandemic agreement could be finalized for this health assembly. IHR, tick. And the pandemic agreement is not done yet, but I have no doubt it will be. You have charted a clear path forward, and you have demonstrated your clear commitment to finalizing it, if possible, this year, if not the latest, by May 2025.
So there is some hope. We just don't send the money. I don't know if that'll work. We've got bastards like this prick who is over there representing us at the moment. The Federal Health Minister, Mark Butler, sucking up the arse of Tetros, whatever his name is, at the Assembly. He is one of the dark bastards, and I'm going to call them that, dark bastards that inhabit our parliament, inhabit both the main political parties and I'm sure to a certain extent some of the other ones. I wouldn't trust the Greens as far as I could kick them, or the Teals, and well, there are others. But I certainly want to believe and trust in a number of parliamentarians who seem to be doing more than anybody else in that place to try and get us answers. I did get an email, just as a mass email, nothing personal, from Senator Antic, who recently travelled to the US and met Donald Trump. That was just part of the trip. He was there for a variety of reasons, but pardon me, the main one was to act on behalf of Julian Assange and try and get him pardoned or the charges dropped or America to give up and allow him to be sent home to here in Australia. Now, he was obviously making those representations to the current administration in the US, but at some point he was able to get an audience with the president himself backstage at one of the big rallies. He was very impressed with the rally, very impressed with the people at the rally. Was at great pains to show and draw the mental picture of the kinds of people that were turning up at the rally. And it was all shapes, sizes, colours and creeds, as it has been for every Trump rally I think there's ever been. There doesn't seem to be any lines drawn there. However, we are now signed up to this pandemic treaty. What does that mean? Well, for starters, it means a pandemic passport. It means that your international passport will be linked to your pandemic passport and any pandemics that happen to come up. And of course, there's more coming. Don't, for God's sake, get sick in Adelaide at the moment because, well, there is nobody in Adelaide to look after you. The Adelaide Hospital has gone on yellow alert, is what it's called. So they've had over 200 staff call in sick with COVID or the flu. And they have had an influx of patients, funnily enough, with COVID or the flu. And they have had unable to fill those sorts of placements. Seems like an ideal opportunity to put this up. You can have a bit of a look at that yourself. I won't talk about it too much, but I'm not exactly sure that if you were getting that particular supposedly saving treatment, how much good it's going to do you. Seriously? So Adelaide is on yellow alert. Adelaide Hospital, the main hospital, that means that they're not taking patients and they're coding them out to other areas. Now, been a long time since I lived in Adelaide. That was the major hospital. There were others, and there was a private one. There's a very, very, very good cranial facial surgery unit in Adelaide at the Flinders University, the Australian Cranial Facial Unit. And they do some of the most amazing, miraculous work on people who have had some dire things happen to them in their life, or in some cases from birth. I know a young man in particular who has been in and out of that particular unit essentially since he was born. There is a story around his birth that one day I would like to tell you, that it involves the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne. And you might be very surprised to hear that story, but that's a story I'd like to bring to you, but on their terms and on their time. But both the mum and the young man I'm talking about at the moment, who suffers something called Apert syndrome. If you want to look up Apert, you'll probably get a bit of a shock. But Apert syndrome delivers a number of difficulties to a child. For instance, this young man can't raise his arms up above his shoulders, for instance. He can't do that because his shoulder blades are inverted. When he was born with webbing between his fingers and between his toes, I think. His body has other difficulties, I think, is probably the best way of describing it. He doesn't have a joint, I think it's in his thumb or thumbs. There is a bit of a problem too with his head, as happens with most kids with Apert syndrome. Their faces aren't formed correctly. Everything inside there, though, is 100% switched on. So these kids look a bit different, look very different. And it's a hell of a life. This young man is now in his teens. He has gone to that Adelaide cranial facial unit, I want to say at least 3, but possibly 4 times, one of them quite recently. But in the early stages, it was to re-break his skull, because part of the Apert's problem, or part of the issue with it, is that the bones don't grow in a normal fashion. Certainly the skull doesn't grow in a normal fashion. It doesn't have that little hole that newborns are born with, you know, the one that we eventually grow into or out of, as the case might be. Well, kids with APERTs are born without that. So as they grow, if their skull isn't fractured and the brain allows to, and then the skull heals over that, they have terrible headaches, they have vision issues, they have all sorts of problems until that pressure is relieved. So this young man has been through a number of those sorts of surgeries, as well as others, and mouth stuff. But without the professionals in Adelaide at the Flinders University, I'm sure it is, at the Australian Craniofacial Unit, they are the best in the world at what they do. And this young man is living his best life as a 16-year-old who I'm sure is facing his own trials and tribulations as we grow up. Kids can be the cruelest of all, we know that. But he's a strong young man, and I'm sure he's going to grow up and be something very, very special in the world. So hopefully when they're ready, I'll come and tell that story. But it is one hell of a story to be told. I got a little bit distracted there, didn't I? Sorry about that. So let's get back onto this lying, thieving, bureaucratic scum heading up the WHO. Tedros, what's his face? Now, Tedros also had a word for people, in many cases, like us.
More than 14 million children in 2022 did not receive a single dose of vaccine. Working together with partners like Gavi and UNICEF, we aim to halve that number by 2030. But you know the serious challenge that's posed by anti-vaxxers, and I think we need to strategize to really push back, because vaccines work, vaccines affect adults, and we have science, evidence on our side. I think it's time to be more aggressive in pushing back on anti-vaxxers. I think they use COVID as an opportunity, and you know all the havoc they're creating.
Havoc they're creating. Havoc they're creating. Seriously, what kind of havoc exactly would we be creating? Thank God other parts of the world are starting to wake up to the facts of what these criminal, evil bastards at the WHO and the UN, and by extension the WEF, are doing. And in Ohio, they're starting to say it very publicly.
And what we did initially was a disaster. Frankly, from a legislative perspective, what we did was we actually incentivized murdering patients in hospitals. What we did was we said, if you go to the hospital and you get a positive COVID test, then the hospital gets more money. If you get put on remdesivir, the hospital gets more money. If you get put on a vent, the hospital gets more money. If you die, the hospital gets more money. So incentivizing treating a patient to get better, instead of saying you get more money when this patient's healthy, we said you get more money when they die. What incentive for a hospital system is there to do anything different from that when the protocol's there? The medical boards and all of these groups, listen, frankly, it would take me 3 days to go through all the evidence that I have on corruption throughout the country on all of these guys. We've dealt with protecting doctors from just nonsensical attacks on their license around the country by medical boards whose board members were practicing doctors and nurses who made tons of money off of the existing COVID protocols. When people like Dr. Bartlett had protocols that worked much better. The medical boards have to be reined in a little bit, because what they did demonstrated that their interest was more in money than it was in protecting the lives of patients, in my opinion.
Hasn't exactly the same thing happened here in Australia? That's exactly what our medical boards did, and some of our doctors stood up and were deregistered for their strength, their courage. They're the kind of doctors I'd go to, by the way. But incentivized is exactly what has happened to our entire health industry. Not incentivized to get people better, incentivized to kill people. Incentivized. That's what has happened. Now, how does that happen? Well, it takes a lot of money, and Big Pharma have got a lot of money. Who owns Big Pharma? Well, we all know, don't we? We followed the corporate ladder. And the other one. You know what I mean? So, really, who's going to stand up? Well, I think Malcolm Roberts is trying for Australians, but he's not putting it in those terms. And that is exactly what's happened. The latest figures show 37,000 Australians have died unexpectedly over and above the average death rates. And it's growing. 10,000 in New Zealand and growing. The numbers in the US are into the hundreds of thousands, and in the UK too. It's everywhere. And what's the only common link? Well, for some reason, you and I, we can figure it out. But the people that have been elected, and I keep saying they've been elected, but do we ever really believe now that those elections were real? How could the world get to such a state? Are we, as a race of Australians, as a people who've cherished our Australian upbringing, who've cherished our way of life, which really is, as far as I can tell, and I've not been to every country in the world, but I've been to a few, quite a few, particularly through Europe and America. Only one country there, by the way, just make sure. We had the best lifestyle in the world. Now, if you want to try and enjoy that lifestyle, you've got to be ready to be stuck in traffic, hordes of traffic, kilometers. I heard one on the radio the other day that was back 17 kilometers. Why? More people on the roads and not enough road infrastructure for it would be one. Another one would be all these new imports that we're getting crashing themselves into the road barriers and other drivers in the imports they're driving. It's absolutely stunning. Our lifestyle has gone to hell. Now, I know in regional areas, there's still a lot of larrikin Aussie. And that's great. But the larrikin Aussie has had the shit kicked out of him and her. It's great to see some of them are appearing back on TikTok, and they're young, speaking some truths. There's a young girl, I've forgotten her name now, but there's a young girl who's working on a property, I suspect somewhere up in central Queensland or further north, and she speaks pretty plain. Don't worry about that. And she's got her head screwed on really well. It's great to see young people coming to this. But somebody elected these people, and they did that because, well, was there nobody better to put up? Why wasn't the community listening to the person that, you know, maybe they could have been, should have been? Overpowered by money, maybe? Their voice quietened by the sound of gold rattling in the pockets of those who would ordinarily give them a trumpet from which to speak. I don't know. We know the mainstream media were paid off due to the spicy cough. 100% tax rebate for a whole year, and then I suspect another year on top. Did your business get a 100% tax rebate for that year? Guarantee it didn't. Why? Because all you had to do was comply to what the media told you, what the box on the wall told you. And unfortunately, many did, as we know. And by the sound of Tedros bloody what's-his-face, it's going to continue going that way. I see Beck Freedom's in the chat. Hello, Beck Freedom. Lovely to have you in tonight. I guess I owe you a phone call. Have you called me last, or do I owe you? I'll make that happen. Good to have you in. There's lots of things happening this week. I'm surprised you had time for me. All right, so let's have a little bit of a look at what's in store for us in the coming days, weeks, and months, kids. China, a lot going on there at the moment. Now, I think I talked about China and Taiwan and the historical ties to Taiwan. Now, that story is being slowly pushed out now through many different media outlets. Not my telling of it. There are much better tellings of it. But Kang Chai-chek, I've never spoken Chinese well. I speak Chinese about as well as the Chinese drive Audis. I'm being generalistic. Just saying. There are some Chinese who can drive. I see the one in Formula One. He does very well. I'm going to get myself in such trouble for saying things like that. All right, the Chinese. Well, the Chinese have been floating around, flying around, and mock landing on Taiwan now for the last couple of weeks. They've just been getting closer. They made a big statement in the last few days saying that they are ready to take back Taiwan. And, well, I guess the world will see what is to come of that. I wonder, though, with what they will take Taiwan back, because it doesn't have to be men. It's very hard to land on the beaches of Taiwan because there aren't many of them. And the ones that are mined and have anti-tank and anti-personnel, barbed wire, all manner of protections on them. So those beaches are not places that you can land an invasion force. And Taiwan has a lot of cliffs around its edges. So unless you're planning on sending them up a cliff where you're likely to be met by the sharp end of, something well made, probably in China, then it's very hard to invade. China may have figured out a way to let loose the dogs of war. Anyway, you get the idea. So, what do you need against? What are you going to? What has the Australian Defence Forces got if they get on the land? I mean, I hope to God those high-priced bastards that are getting $1 million a year out of us at the CSIRO just as a wage to sit and administer the thing, making robot crocodiles with, miniguns strapped to their backs and 2 saddlebags of ammunition and rocket launchers shoved up their ass so they can fire at something bigger. Is that what our blokes are doing? Is that what the Australian defence industry is doing? Because if China are making that sort of shit, doesn't matter how many crocodiles, how many brown snakes, how many redbacks or funnel web spiders you throw at them, not going to work. I suspect sand could be a reasonable thing, but you're going to need your own personal EMP device, don't you? Because if one of those comes into your yard, not much short of a grenade is going to stop it. interesting too, the Chinese are the largest makers of drone technology in the world. That technology has either been stolen from, adopted, I think is how they term it, stolen from other people, or been bought for phenomenal amounts of money. And the technology has been overwritten, I should say. And now, essentially, everything is made in China when it comes to drones. Everything. Every little part. I know that because I used to build them. And it all came from China. So what have we got to defend ourselves against that? I mean, DJI drones and any other drone that is manufactured out of China, and I suspect probably everywhere else because they'll have the same chip manufactured in China in them, is geo-fenced. It geolocates as soon as it takes off. That's why it can come back to you. And it knows exactly where on the planet it is located. And down in its systems are located every airport, every no-fly zone, every restricted area, everything that every pilot needs to know about where you can and can't fly, even at a height of not greater than 400 feet, which is what those drones that you and I have are meant to stay at. But a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people do other things. But those drones will not start if you're within a certain range of an airport. I think it's 5 kilometers. It might be 3. It might be further now because some of those drones will fly greater than 7 kilometers from their launch point and back again. So it could be at least that far. If you are going into a controlled airspace area, and let's say there are genuine reasons to do that, you might be the owner of a house who wants to sell that house because it's in the flight path of the airport, and the jets are coming in over your house at 1,000 feet or 500 feet, and you've had enough of the foundations and the windows rattling every 10 minutes at peak times. So real estate agent wants to come in and do an appraisal and then get some photos and yada, yada, yada. Oh, let's get a drone in and take some shots. Well, yes, you can get a drone in there and you can get permission to fly, but to do all that, you've got to go through Air Services Australia, CASA, and yada, 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 get the appropriate paperwork, and then I'm sure that there is a setting that you can apply for and gain with the appropriate paperwork that allows you to fly the drone inside those sorts of areas, or you need a home built to do it with. Things have changed a little bit for a few years, but it used to be how it all worked, and I can't see that they're dropping regulations around drones. All they're doing is making more of them. But the Chinese, well, we've seen that they have some intention at any rate of moving through the Pacific. Their wolf warrior style of diplomacy, their Belt and Road projects, which have always already seen favour in places like Sri Lanka. Hello to all the new Sri Lankans arriving in Australia looking for a better home because your government was stupid enough to do business with China. And the Indians, and I'm not sure that they did the business with China, though. I think the Indians made it very, very, very difficult for the Malacca Straits, something like that, somewhere down that pointy bit. And there are many folks, of course, coming in from other areas that have been similarly touched by Chinese generosity. Build you a new port. Not a dock or a wharf, but a whole new port. Yeah, absolutely. No worries. Okay, well, that'll be fine. And look, if you default on the loan repayment, it's nothing big. We'll just assume control. That's all right. We'll take our asset and we'll just run that. So then they control everything that comes into and out of the island. There are already, I don't know if you've traveled through the Pacific Islands or the South Pacific Islands too much. I haven't, but I know plenty of people who have, and they tell me that most of the businesses are owned by people other than the islanders. These, in many cases, are Chinese or Indian descent. And they are the businessmen, the marketers, and the salespeople on those places. Now, I don't know why that's the case. I don't know how it's managed to get that way. I have heard of this kind of thing happening before, where certain races take control of really the financial supply and demand, if you like, for the people. And eventually the people start wondering, hang on a minute, we're being sort of kept here. We're just being milked. Can you think of another time in history where that might have happened? So, I don't know. Watch that space. They are saying they're coming to Australia too, which would be interesting. I guess when they're coming, they'll bring some of their food with them.
So my mother was showing me that she opened the banana, that she thinks that these are not real.
Oh, there you go.
So my mother was showing me that she opened the banana, that she thinks that these are not real bananas. We got it from the supermarket, but when she opens it and she breaks it in half, it gets very tough and doesn't really break. And when it pulls, it's like it's glue. It's very tight and doughy.
Now I know goddamn well. It's raining in every spot but on that damn Cheeto. Do y'all see this shit? The Cheeto is like protected in this circle. What the hell going on?
Chiles que ya están Ay, pero por mucho, ¿por qué hacen Mira. Mira, hasta hacen aureolas.
Estoy diciendo que mira qué de humo hay. Ya, Gaby, porque puede explotar ahí. ¿Y así no las comimos?
So I just
there is some sort of a trick with bananas, at least. I don't know if it works with the rest of the fruit, but there is some sort of trick with bananas that you immerse it in a fluid, and it's a pretty regular fluid. It's nothing too terribly toxic, but it does turn it into a very rubbery kind of thing. But maybe it's something to do with that too. I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting thing I'd pass along to you. Just having a bit of a scan through some of the chat here tonight. G'day, Daniel. Nice to have you in again, mate. I do like this comment of yours, which I left up briefly and now I'll put back up again. Sincerely get stuffed. I think you speak for so many of us, my friend, so many of us. I've been skimming through the comments. I've started a couple, which I'll get back to at some point in, I would suspect, the very near future. Because as I turn the page, it tells me that I'm getting up to the fun part of the evening. So I've been contacted by some dear friends in far north Queensland. They have a number of questions that they would like to put to Riccardo Bosi, but he's not listening to them. It appears he's not listening to anybody else. His spiritual advisors, I've been reading the comments, his spiritual advisors and he are off overseas. Now, I don't know if that's the whole family or him. Apparently said something in a dark room, so I haven't watched it. I guarantee he won't talk about any of the things myself or Dave Graham or Beck Freedom, who's in the chat tonight, would like him to talk about. But they have asked me to put forward some questions to him. So I copy and pasted them and just sort of basically set it up without really reading. So you might have to forgive me here for just a moment, as some of it might have a spelling error or two. So live with that. But I just, copy and pasted. I was running a bit late putting this thing together. So the first question is, Bosi worked for Raytheon in the past. Is he still employed by them? My understanding is that he did work for Raytheon at some point in his past. I can't tell you the exact timeline. I do have it somewhere, but couldn't really begin to tell you which computer it's on. But I'm sure somebody out there will actually know that, and we'll have it written down. Maybe it's you, Beck, or a mutual friend that we have. Number two, is he now contracted to Raytheon and working as an undercover controlled opposition, or in an undercover controlled opposition role? That is a very good question. Does it have to be just for Raytheon? Could he be contracting to someone else? Admittedly, probably under contract to those controlling Australia, and be controlled opposition? A very good question. This is more a statement than a question. When he was in the Australian SAS, the Special Air Services, he would have signed an oath of allegiance to the Australian military and the Australian corporation government. Yes, he would have. Has he rescinded the above oaths and all other oaths to the Australian military and the Australian corporation government publicly? That's a good question. I have no idea to the answer to that, and that's why the questions are for Riccardo, I guess, and not for me to answer. It would seem, given his stance on loyalty, morality for A1 members, and the fact that if you had dual citizenship, you were not allowed to become an A1 member. And that has been a great puzzle, regardless of the many explanations that he's given for it, a great puzzle to many of us. But he has said you can't hold allegiances, two allegiances. I think as part of that answer. Well, I think question 4, has he rescinded the above oaths and all other oaths to the Australian military and the Australian corporate government publicly, is a very apt and good question. Now, the offer is always here for Riccardo to come on the show and answer these and a couple of other questions that I'd like to ask him. But these ones specifically coming from my good friends up north, and hoping to see you soon. Tucker Carlson's coming to town. Pardon me. Going to be quite an event, I think, that one. So now, question number 5, is there a public video and or documentation that people can see of these rescinding of oaths and contracts? I think that is a spectacular question. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of something that I should have here to show you, and it doesn't appear, for whatever reason, to be here. That's very strange. All right, so there is a public video and or documentation. I don't know. I've not seen anything of it. I have not heard anything of it from people that he might have worked with in the past. So no, I can't answer any of that, which is, once again, I'm not here to answer questions, just to ask them. And this one, if not, why not? Given the current situation, the Bosi knows Australia is in politically, and as a leader of the Australia One Party, is it not a conflict of interest to not rescind your oaths to the military and above all Australian corporations publicly, if you haven't already done so? I think that's a pretty reasonable assumption, that given the current situation and the fact that he was so adamant that if you held dual citizenship, you couldn't have two masters. Because to swear an oath to Australia while you hold citizenship in another country, like the UK or anywhere else, the UK is easy because you're swearing an oath to a queen. a different queen, because in Australia you don't swear an oath to the king, you swear an oath to the Queen of Australia, whoever she is. We did find where she lived in Sydney. I think it was don't bother. Anyway, so those are the 6 questions, well, call it 5, from the folks up in North Queensland, and I think they are very reasonable questions to ask. So if you have a way to Mr. Bosi, and he actually replies to you, congratulations. If you'd pass on these, we'd be very interested in hearing his thoughts. And that and a couple of other questions. As I say, the invitation is always here. The welcome mat is always down, and very happy to have a chat. Always have been. That's the weird and wonderful thing about all of this. So yeah, apparently he's going overseas with his spiritual advisors, is apparently the quote. I don't know if that is the case. Then it's very disappointing. I've seen some of the evangelist rooms and talks that he's been in, and if there is a trip being funded, it's being funded through the good people, the good Christians who actually, for whatever reason, are believing what's going on, and he's insulating them from the shitstorm that's coming. Because there is more coming, folks. And Beck may well be part of that. I don't know. I'm not. I'm little bits of it, but not of the big stuff that's coming. I'll be sitting here like others with my jaw agape, because I suspect I know what's coming. And it's probably better that he's out of the country. However, these, particularly if he's going to America, these are very, very dedicated Christians, evangelistic type Christians who hold a very, very big voting swathe in favor of Donald Trump. So who knows? Maybe they're going to get an opportunity to finally meet face to face. And if that's the case, where does that leave everything here in Australia? Because will it change his style of leadership just because he's got 2 minutes with ex-President Donald Trump? Should I call him convicted felon? And he comes back here, will everybody think him a hero because he got a pat on the shoulder in 5 minutes with Trump? A photo opportunity? Or what if he doesn't come back? I beg your pardon. What if he does come back without a photo with Donald Trump or General Flynn? What if he just comes back with shots of his amazing fan base that he's been developing in America? Because he's left Australia dry of information. For 2 years, he's been off developing a fan base in America and other parts of the world. And he's been aided by some of the best patriots that America has to offer. So watch this space. I think while Dave's occupied with other things at the moment, this will be something that you might hear more and more and more about from him in the not too distant future. All power to him. But let's see whether or not the Bosis can, or Rick can specifically answer those ones. I don't think it's up to Rhiannon. I do have a list of questions that have been offered up to her, but I find a lot of them extremely, extremely funny, as only Australian humour can be. However, if nothing else, I have respect for women everywhere. And some of these questions, while extremely funny, I hold too much respect for Rhiannon in particular to ask her. So, no, I would not. In at least the cases that have been put up so far, ask her to answer the same questions. Although there are, I think, some questions that she could help with as well. And the offer would be open to them both sitting down and having a talk and explaining what's going on. Because we know, all of us, doesn't matter what channel you like, which one of us you follow or subscribe to or anything else, we all know we have a brotherhood because most of us were brought into this fight by that man and a number of the speeches that he made. Now, if that's his role in this, to bring us into the fight, me, you, Beck, Dave, everyone, and you sitting at home doing placards, saving pennies so that you can come to the next rally, make the next sign, go out and plant the next forest of the fallen. We're all in it. Except Rick and his spiritual advisors, it seems, who are off overseas. I wonder if it stopped at Guam on the way past. Albo mentioned he doesn't want to interfere with US elections. There might be a question above that somewhere, J1, but he doesn't want to interfere in the US elections. Oh, my God. Well, Albo interfering in the US elections, oh, my Lord. It would be like... It would be like a fly landing on an elephant turd and go through to make a difference, I think. And I think the analogy is pretty similar and standing. Zippy, that's horrible news. Guy found dead at hubby's work the other day, 52 years of age. I've seen across the weekend a number of, unexplained deaths. ABC Pacific presenter who's 48 passed away just really unexpectedly. There's been a couple of other sports people who've fallen over too, I believe. So every day, a newsworthy person, at least one, makes the headlines on whichever rancid piece of mainstream media is covering that. News.com.au seems to be a classic because, they'll put up a story about God knows who died, God knows where, because they were some kind of footballer in a country you can't pronounce or spell, or much less point to on a map. This is the kind of bullshit that they just divert you with, unexpectedly. And because you follow soccer, you might know who he was. So we're mentioning it, but just move on. One day, the media has got to be brought to task for this. They have got to be brought to task. It's just shocking. Cuz, well, haven't we now heard that, martial law, I think I heard, look, I won't quote because I don't know who it was. I can't remember, but I did hear one of the American pundits, let's call them, pontificating that martial law may not be necessary now, and that the lockdown may not be necessary now. Why? I'm not completely sure. I don't know that I ever heard that reason or finished listening to that particular podcast. But for a variety of reasons, I don't believe that that there's any truth to it. I think the martial law thing has to happen, if only for a briefish time, because there are going to be a lot of confused people. If it's happening in the way that we were originally told, then certain people could be locked down at home and expect a knock on the door, because, in lockdown, that's where you'll be, at your nominated address. If you're not, then they'll really go looking for you. So, yeah, I don't think that they can get away without having some sort of martial law or lockdown. And then, while that will be very hard to swallow for many people, once everybody is arrested, then I think the abundance might follow, the revaluation. And what kind of currency, I don't know, but I reckon silver will be a good one to hang on to. And speaking of silver, the Byron Bay Bob is going off, just between you, me, and the Gatepost. I spoke to David the other day down in Byron Bay, where they have adopted the Ainsley Bullion round, the 1 ounce and the ½ ounce round, to become dubbed the Byron Bay Bob. And you can trade the Byron Bay Bob around town at various different businesses, and there's quite a large community using it now. So much so that there is a new Byron Bay Bob being introduced, and I think it will be this week. If not, it could be early next week. And I have David and old girl here, and even if not, I'll take the car down. We'll head down to Byron Bay and do a night down there with the launch of the Byron Bay Bob 1/10 ounce silver coin, or round, I beg your pardon. I'm guessing it's a round. It might be something of a different shape, you never know, but I'm guessing it's going to be a round. So can't wait to look forward. I can't wait to see what it looks like. So it's going to be pretty cool. The Byron Bob is also making a few people up north very interested. So I had a bit of a chat with the guys from Ainsley today, and I'll have another chat tomorrow, I hope. And we'll see whether or not, should things work out in the next couple of weeks or so, we might be able to come up to Cairns and maybe Mariba and possibly a little further north, to bring you guys some rather interesting tales and stories from the far north of Queensland, but also get far north Queensland introduced to the Byron Bay Bob, which there is a huge looking forward to bringing it to you. It's going to be great. Really looking forward to it. Cairns News, of course, partners with what we're doing here, and can't thank them enough for everything that they do. Forms, they're in the same boat as us when it comes to money. In fact, I'll tell you that I'm $200 overdrawn at the moment. That's the state that we're in. However, we push on regardless, and the Cairns News have very generously invited me to potentially tag along with them on an event that's coming up in Cairns in the not too distant future. Hopefully I'll be able to talk more about that in the next few days, but I'll just tell you, I think it's the 21st of June. Tickets are available at Ticket Tech if you want to check out that event. I think if I mention it here, I'll probably get taken off at least one of the channels, so I won't. But you might have a bit of an idea of what that's about if you've been following probably one of the bigger voices in the alt media world coming to Australia soon. So you never know, might see us in far north Queensland in a couple of weeks, but we won't get there without your help. So if you can help, you can go to vofhq.com and donate. or you can become a member. We'd love to have you from as little as $1.25 a week. It is that simple. But regardless, we'll try and move heaven and earth to get Far North Queensland for a variety of reasons, including a festival that's very important, not just to the local area where it happens, but as it turns out, to Australia. So there's a lot of really interesting things in Far North Queensland, a lot of really great history. And I'm really looking forward to being able to get up there and bring it to you, because it's stuff we all really need to know. We really need to know. And it's such a long way for a lot of Australians to go to. And you've really got to want to go to some of these places to learn this history. And if you don't know that it's there, you're not likely to want to visit them. So I hope to change that perspective a little bit for you, I think. Just having a bit of a glance down here. Actually, just looking at some of the chats. G'day, Starseed. Taiwan and Singapore are a white hat move. Deep state assets being removed. I tend to agree. I think I said in the one of the lives the other day that I think Taiwan is China's Ukraine for Russia. So I think it's the deep state stronghold, the playground, if you like, and it's going to be removed one way or t'other. Just having a bit of a glance down. Sunflower, who let the dogs out? Yeah, I like that. WHO, meaning. Soundlight, how many, really good question. How many DJI drones have geo-hacked the landscape? Well, I'm not sure whether geo-hacked is the right term. However, some of the cameras, some of the technology that's available to be put on these drones and flown around in people's or out of backyards, out of parklands, all that sort of thing. Some of that technology is readily used today. Infrared technology, for instance, searching for animal numbers in your local parks at night. They'll put up a drone and fly around at 400 feet above the noise where people can hear it, but it'll have a fairly decent infrared camera on it. Some of them have LiDARs on them, so that and they usually use, rather than a drone with multiple blades, they use an aircraft sort of up to about 3 meters long, and they'll put a LiDAR on that aircraft. Now, a LiDAR is a side mapping instrument, but it draws very detailed images. So essentially, you'll find that police will have LiDAR mounted on their drones when they're using them in operations around houses and all that sort of thing, and they'll fly them over. And while it'll also give them eyes on the thing, it will be mapping the house, it'll be mapping the surrounds of the house, and giving them an image of all of that back for tactical use. So they can fly around, take a peek in a window and say, all right, that's the bedroom, or that's a bedroom, or that's the bathroom, or that's the kitchen window, the front window, and get a bit of an idea of where people are. They have thermal imaging that can look through walls and track the heat signatures of the bodies inside. So all of that is used now by your local constabulary as they prowl around people's backyards at night. I'll have you know that it's also all available to buy for people who have the money straight from China to put on their own home-built drones that'll fly anywhere they damn well please. Just saying. Not that I have any of those. I've only got one drone left now, and I think I bought it from a cash converters. It's a really old Mavic Mini that still takes a nice image. but batteries are don't fly it much. Paul Revere, your toothpicks came from China. Would you be disturbed to learn that the wood your toothpick is made of probably came from New Zealand and went to China to be turned into toothpicks? That's just, sad. Very, very sad. You heard someone went crazy after the fourth jab and topped themselves. I don't know. Plenty of other reasons for people to go and do that. Go crazy, I mean. Just the pressures of what's going on in the world at the moment in everyday life. They do take a toll. I got to stop looking at your comments, Paul. J1, the only thing you kept is your drone. Always good for personal surveillance, mate, unless you live near an airport. That's all I'm saying. If it's a DJI. No, you're right. The earlier DJI drones didn't have geofencing. Oops, pardon me. And they just don't upgrade the software. No, you're quite right. I don't know. I think the Phantoms, the early Phantoms, were the first of the geofenced ones, I want to say. I'm thinking back a few years now. Sunflower. Yeah. Okay. So flying a drone out of your backyard. I had this with a neighbor. So unless the drone is, hovering over your backyard or peeking in your windows or doing anything like that, there is no reason that a qualified person can't fly a drone out of your backyard. I'll tell you the instance that happened to me. My housemate came home and said that there were a couple of suspicious people walking around in the street and were asking, kind of weird questions. And she'd seen them walk into a house where she knew there was nobody home. And she was sort of walking past, and as they came out, they were making it sound like they were friends of the people who were there, and she knew those people very well and could tell that they weren't friends at all. So she came home and asked me to go out and try and keep an eye on these couple of blokes who were shonking around and going in and out of properties, knocking on doors, seeing who was home, who wasn't. So rather than run up the street and, be rather obvious about the whole thing, I just happened to have the drone handy. So I pulled it out, launched it, and set it off at a reasonable altitude away and down the streets to look where these people were. And sure enough, found them in the front yard of a house with no car. That doesn't mean there wasn't somebody home, but they weren't exactly standing out on the street or on the footpath leading to the front door. They were sort of held around a not too well camouflaging tree. Not smart. Anyway, when I came back, because of the nature of the area where the house was, there were a lot of gum trees around and some aerials and my Starlink dish, which meant, following the rules, I brought it in over the house and into the backyard, nowhere near people or anything else. But it was one of my first times actually flying that drone, and I was a bit nervous, just flying it over the house and making sure I wasn't going to hit anything. And I whatever on the roof as I passed over, and didn't really think that much of it at the time. I was just concentrating too hard and landed the drone. The next thing I hear is bang on the front door and this angry yelling and shouting and jumping up and down and carrying on, making all sorts of threats about me flying that drone and if I ever flew that drone again and what he'd do to me if I ever dared to put that drone in the air again and yada yada, and people's privacy and da 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 da. I can tell you that didn't work out very well for him that day. We had a very direct conversation, and at the end of it, he went away very happy that he could still walk away. So yeah, do not attack a drone while it's flying. It is an offence. It is the same offence that if you were to throw a stick at a jet while it was coming into land, trying to throw a stick into the engine, or shoot it down with a missile or a tennis ball or whatever you wanted to hit up into it. It's the same offence. Because if you're a licensed drone pilot, you know the laws, you know where you can fly, and if you're not breaking them, and I wasn't, then you have nothing to worry about. The person that attacks the drone or the drone operator has a serious amount of shit coming their way if they interfere with a drone while it's in flight. That's causing an aircraft to crash, even if it is a drone. Now, my little mini's probably not going to kill you if it comes down from, 20 meters. But there are much bigger drones, much better drones. And what if they're not at 20 feet? What if some dickhead gets out a slingshot and happens to be good at it and nails a hovering drone at 100 meters high? And that thing comes down and goes through your roof, through your windscreen, through the windscreen of anybody's car, or worse still, hits a kid on a push bike. Let's hope they're wearing a helmet. When I was building drones, I used to put props on them made of carbon fiber. Strong shit, real sharp, real sharp. If you've got racing drones, you'll have carbon fiber props. You don't want to stick your fingers into carbon fiber props. You can get away with sticking your fingers into plastic ones, all right. But don't do it with carbon fibers. It hurts. There's blood. Some of them, depending on the size of the motor, will take your finger clean off. Some of them will take your whole hand. Not meant to be a horror story, but there you go. Just a little life on drones. Speaking of drones, that absolutely pathetic immigration minister of ours, whose name I have forgotten because it just appalls me to say it, he's come out today and said, oh, no, we're not using drones to monitor the illegal immigrants that we let out of incarceration because the people's money paid enough to the lawyers to argue a good argument to let them out. And when I said we were monitoring them with drones, I really meant that I had no idea what I was talking about. And I'm blaming it on the bureaucrats in the office for misleading me. This is the level of competence, and I say that with my tongue firmly planted in my cheek, the level of competence that our leadership has. Shouldn't we be calling for an election? Shouldn't the people be standing up and calling for an election? I mean, I guess that's only going to prolong it. Because Albo, if we started protesting too loudly, Albo would know that, calling an election only means he's going to get thrown out. So maybe we've got to put it off and catch him on the sneak. I don't know. Do we even make that decision? Is it the power brokers that Riccardo and crew are going to come and take out? I don't know. I'll be praying to my spiritual advisor tonight. I don't have anyone that travels with me. I just pray that maybe he is going over there to find a solution for us all. But I seriously doubt it. Seriously doubt it. So disappointing. To have so much faith in someone. It is what it is. We move on. A bit low, Carl. I don't know, Fern, what you're talking about. Sorry, I must have missed it at the time. Pete from Pinnaroos in. Nice to see you, mate. I didn't start with who was in first tonight. There's been a lot of chat, so it'd be difficult for me to go back up and find it all about now. Should have been going over an hour too. Hey, Dusty. Oh, you're laughing. That's good. Your family are Freemasons from the Orange Lodge in Ireland. Well, J1, we all have a question for you now, don't we? Where's the apron? Or do you have the sword? Sorry, Agate Master, just read your thing. Anal is the big queen. 35 gay parades in Sydney. A gay parade was stopped, I believe, not in Sydney recently, maybe, by a different parade. That was a parade of Palestinians who were protesting what's going on in Israel at the moment. It was interesting when the two came together, but the gay parade stopped. Just saying. Just saying. All right. I think that's a very valid question, Sunflower. And I certainly know in the media's case, yes. I certainly know in the case of sportsmen, current and present, who pass away unexpectedly, yes, is that answer. So these people were all, in some way, to a more greater than lesser extent, involved in promoting it at some point. Yes. And I think we're going to see a lot more. We don't seem to have really got into Hollywood yet. So, and could that be because none of them, well, most of them didn't get it? Or if they did, they got the rubber plunger style shot. So, yeah. I think it's all a little bit weird. Here you go. Sunflower, I'm liking what you're saying. My pendulum says no longer a lockdown, but yes to an EBS. Look, to be honest, I think the lockdown depends on how far down, and there are going to be there's going to be multiple different lockdowns. So from an Australian perspective, can we put it that way? From an Australian lockdown perspective, how many Australians are on the list that Pascal Nadaji refers to? He is referring to a list of over 500,000 unsealed, or rather sealed indictments on folks who've committed treason and many other things in the US. He has spoken a number of 8 million people that will be tried and killed if found guilty of the charges that they are confronted with. Now, is that 8 million Americans, or is that 8 million people worldwide? Would it be 8 million people worldwide? Does that mean we've cleaned out the elite and all the treacherous, treasonous, evil people under them from the 13 families down. Is that what that means? Okay. But if it's only 8 million people out of the US and it figures out the US's issue, well, great. How many people in Australia are going to be arrested? How many doctors and nurses? How many police? How many Army, Navy, Air Force? And then business owners who, with malice, coerced staff into it or fired them for it. How far are they going to drill down in this lockdown and arrest cycle? I think that would depend. And if you are going to do an arrest, particularly medical people, a lockdown where they're feeling the most self-important and will be at their posts waiting for the arrivals of the floods of pandemic-riddled people, they just all might be wearing camo and carrying weapons when they arrive. You've got them all in a hospital. And speaking of hospital, we go back to the image I started out with before the show. This tug was seen past topsail in North Carolina. Now, I don't know which way it was going past, heading north or heading south. But that is most definitely a prison barge. I can tell you that because there are 4 of them off Gitmo, and I've seen images of them. In fact, I've seen drone footage of one of them. There are more going to Gitmo. That could be going to Gitmo. I doubt it's going to get tied up in the river there in Washington, D.C. I've forgotten the name of it. I nearly said it was the Derwent. Certainly not the Derwent. No, don't be kids. It'll come to me. It's just not coming to me right now. So, yeah. Good to see people talking about the Byron Bay Bob. I'm sorry I'm catching up. Yeah, look, that Byron Bay Bob is a great thing. And don't forget, if you go into Ainsley or you're going to buy online, don't know exactly when they're going to be released yet. I was talking to Paul today about something else, and I did ask about it briefly. He did say that I hope to have them, I think, by mid next week at the latest. So as soon as we've got one to show you, I'm sure they'll come on and show it to us. Get a bit of a look at it. And if you want to be involved in the Byron Bay Bob thing, I'll hook up with David and we'll go down and do a show from down there one night. And might even spend a day/night down there doing shows because there's a lot of interest in it, a lot of stories we can tell from down that part of the world, and a very large community that's getting involved with silver in a very real and workable way in their community. And it just might work in yours too. So remember, if you go to Ainsley and you use either my name or Voice of Freedom, you'll get a small. Now it's nothing huge, not going to make you go ho ho unless you're buying a lot. Then it adds up, lets you buy a bit more. But every little bit helps, is what I say. So if you want to get a little bit, then get a little bit off that by using Voice of Freedom or my name when you buy either online or you go in store. They'd love to see you both in their Brisbane and Melbourne offices. And of course, I have been talking to you about doing a story from the vault and one from the refinery, where we'll see some of these rounds being minted. Is that the term? Being pushed out. That sounds bad. Being poured. Oh, look, we'll find the whole process on a lot of things, not just the Byron Bay Bobs, but maybe some of the gold as well. Fingers crossed. I'd love to see how the process really works. I only learned the other day that apparently to get those really shiny gold bars, all of the gold is like heated up, as we all well know, and we've probably seen images of it being poured, but it's poured in a vacuum to make it that really shiny gold. I'm going to find out if that's the truth. Don't know if it is or not, but I'm certainly learning that checking your sources and doing your research is a very important thing. So you should do that too. But I'm really looking forward to bringing you the process from potentially from the making of a Byron Bay bulb to the storing of it in a vault that only you can access. Sunflower, you got to send me the link about Roseanne Barr in the drone chat, because I'm very interested. Roseanne Barr speaks some truth, folks. If you get the opportunity, she's always spoken truth, which is why she's not on our screens anymore. One of the funniest ladies, but not on our screens. She is, however, on the Trump tour quite regularly. Well hooked up there, and God love her for it. All right, so I don't think I'm seeing too many other things here. Dusty, you sick bastard. Oh, sorry. Oh, God, I needed that laugh. Thank you. Oh, God. I needed that. Thank you. All right. I'm going to go before Dusty puts something else up that makes me cry laughing. That's very funny. All right. Loving your work, folks. Hope you're having a good day. Go forth, have an even better night. And tomorrow, get back at it. The fight continues. The questions remain. There's the questions. And the door is always open to hear some of those answers. There is also a group who've got a bunch of questions for John Wilson too. But I'm not sure that John's any more up for answering them than Riccardo at the moment. And I'm not sure where John's spiritual advisors have taken him. But he's not answering phone calls either at the moment. So it is what it is. Push on regardless. Beck, I don't know if you're still in the live stream, but don't forget to check out Beck's feed on Facebook, folks, Beck Freedom. You can find her on Facebook, and she's doing a great job at the moment. Trolls, God almighty, trolls. If I have one word of advice, ignore them. Some of them are worth talking to. The ones that you can actually speak with and have a decent conversation with are good. Well worth knowing, well worth interacting with, because they do bring up perspectives that challenge our positions that we need to defend. And through the sharing of information on both sides, we learn new things. Ask Cooker Watch. She learned about climate change through me. Didn't want to debate me about it after that. So, and now, of course, it's all widely known that there are things flying in the sky spraying us. So, who knows? Conspiracy theory, folks. They just keep coming true. Isn't that a bit weird? Who knows? Stranger things could happen. Dickheads on the road might learn how to drive.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!